If you've been told that your chronic pain is coming from a bulging disc, a herniated disc, arthritis, degeneration, tendonitis, I need you to watch this video. I had chronic knee pain for 11 years and doctors gave me the same exact reasons for why I was in pain every time that they looked at my MRI scan. But what I didn't understand at the time was that billions of people around the world have those same exact findings and yet they have zero pain. Those are not the cause of chronic pain. And it wasn't until I found out that those doctors were actually completely wrong and that their words were actually making me worse that I was able to make a mental shift, which was an extremely important part of my full recovery to where now I do absolutely whatever I want with my knees. Things that I couldn't have imagined doing years ago when I was in debilitating pain every single day. And if you're thinking, but I have back or neck pain, this video doesn't apply to me because you had knee pain. That's not the case. This video completely applies to everyone who's been given a scary diagnosis from a doctor after seeing their MRI for their chronic pain. Now let's talk about the typical journey of a chronic pain sufferer. We've been taught that if we have pain, we should go to a doctor. So that's what we do. Sometimes we'll be sent to get on MRI. And sometimes the MRI results are fine and the doctors will tell you that they have no idea why you're in pain. But in other cases, doctors might see something that they call abnormal and they'll quickly blame what they see on that image as the cause. Now, once we hear this from doctors, we start to search the internet and we start to get afraid of everything that we're reading. We read these horror stories of people that have been in pain for years and we start to imagine, whoa, what if this could happen to me? Our pain is actually getting worse even after going to the doctor who was supposed to help us get rid of that pain in the first place. And in many cases, treatments are recommended, so we go, but they don't work because we're treating the symptoms and not the root cause, but I'll save that for later. As doctors and other professionals aren't giving us a solution, we keep doing more research online, and that causes even more self-diagnosis, which can start to really scare us. And after not getting anywhere, we might go to see more specialists, sometimes in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world, but treatments still don't work. Fear grows even more, and then we start to avoid things that trigger our pain. And lastly, eventually a feeling of I am absolutely broken just starts to consume us. That was my journey and probably many of yours as well. And it could have all been avoided if I understood and if you understood why that initial MRI was actually never the cause of the pain in the first place. Let's get into it. Herniated discs, arthritis, tendonitis, degeneration, bone on bone, meniscus tears. There's so many others, but you've probably heard one of those or maybe another. Doctors tell us that these are the causes of our chronic pain. And I'm not saying that they don't exist in you. They obviously showed up in your scan. But what if I told you that millions and even billions of pain-free people around the world have the same exact findings on their scans? I'm telling you that there is a huge percentage of people on this earth who work out. They run marathons. They hunt in the deserts of Africa. And they have the same exact findings on your scan that doctors pointed to as the cause of your pain. In my case, doctors pointed to meniscus tears and patellar tendinopathy as the cause of my knee pain. That's what they pointed to on my scans. But I now bounce around like a wild animal with zero knee pain. Now, do you think that those things on my scan just went away? That my knee miraculously healed after 11 years? Definitely not. Those findings are still there. My knee still has those tears and that patellar tendinopathy. The only thing that changed is that I have no more pain there because those reasons were never the correct reasons for why my chronic pain was there in the first place. And they're not the reason for yours either. Let's give you some actual data to prove this. In 2015, researchers pulled data from 33 studies which covered 3,110 people with zero back pain. Take a look at what they found on this table. They divided their findings by age groups. Remember that these are people with no back pain at all. At 20 years old, 37% of people showed disc degeneration and 30% have a disc bulge. And those numbers jump up to 68% and 50% by the age of 40. Those numbers only increase as age increases. So what does this tell us? You might be asking, why are those people not in pain? The reason is because those abnormalities, what doctors like to call them, are equivalent to wrinkles. They're just what happens in a human body as time passes. They are totally normal and not the cause of pain. One more study. In 2013, a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine followed patients who were diagnosed with sciatica caused by a herniated disc. Researchers rescanned these patients 1 year later to answer one specific question. Could the MRI tell you a year later who was still suffering and who had recovered, who was completely pain-free? The answer was absolutely not. The abnormalities visible on the follow-up MRI a year later did not distinguish between patients who still had sciatica pain and those who didn't. Some patients with a herniated disc that was still clearly visible on their scan were completely pain-free, while others with a herniated disc were still suffering. And even in patients who had disc surgery, MRI scans still showed disc herniation in 53% of people who had zero symptoms at all. More than half the people with a visible herniation on their scan were living completely normal, pain-free lives. This study is different because it isn't just showing that pain-free people can have damage. The study before already established that. It's showing that even when you follow the same population over time, from diagnosis through recovery, the imaging and the pain don't move together. Two people can have the same MRI and one can be in agony and the other can be totally pain-free. The scan was actually never telling doctors what they thought it was telling them. So why are these studies so important? Because they make it clear that the findings that doctors point to as the cause of your chronic pain are actually not it. Even if they were the cause of some acute pain, meaning maybe you really overdid it and you started to get some tendon pain due to some tendonitis. The body adapts extremely quickly. A few weeks of rest or rehab and you should be totally pain-free. Just like when you were a kid. You might have sprained your ankle after landing on the floor when jumping off of a swing. But a few weeks later, you were totally recovered and you went back to running. Our bodies are not meant to have chronic pain. They're extremely capable. Chronic pain exists because your brain, which is stuck in a hypervigilant state, is using pain as a protective alarm because somewhere along the way, it learned to perceive something as dangerous. Maybe it was that scary MRI. Maybe it was the fear that built up every single time that you searched your symptoms online. Maybe it was life stressors. Whatever it was, your brain locked onto it and pain became the alarm that it keeps sounding long after there's anything left to protect you from. And that's the real reason that those studies matter. Because your MRI was never the horrendous picture that your doctors made it out to be. Now listen to this sentence that follows, because this right here is valuable beyond belief. The belief that was created when you saw that MRI and when you heard those words from your doctor are part of the danger that your brain is still perceiving as dangerous. And it's a huge reason for why you are still in pain. So the real work isn't fixing your knee. It isn't fixing your back or your shoulder. It's teaching your brain safety and dismantling the danger that has been keeping it in this negative pattern. Now let's talk about how you can do that, how you can get better with this information. So now that we know that these abnormalities that doctors have pointed to on your scan are not the cause of your chronic pain because they literally show up in billions of pain-free people around the world. And now that we know that the belief that was instilled in you when a doctor told you that the MRI is the cause of your pain, that it's part of what your brain is perceiving as dangerous, we can make the first and the most important step to recovery. If you don't nail this step down, then it's going to be very hard for you to make a full recovery from a brain-generated symptom. The first step is making the decision to believe that your pain is not a signal of structural damage, but instead of a brain that is still perceiving danger. When you believe that, all of a sudden, the old belief that your back or your shoulder or your knee is damaged, that belief is neutralized. And all of a sudden, it stops being something that your whole nervous system is acting on. Your brain has less of a reason to protect you with pain if you yourself know that your back is actually fine. Now, this is an oversimplification. The process for getting out of pain doesn't happen immediately, and it's not that easy. But that's the first step to take, because once you can make that first step in understanding and belief, then the old pattern of negative thoughts that your nervous system was acting on, thoughts like, my back is damaged. What if it gets worse? I'll never get better. Those thoughts have less of an effect because you now understand that they have no substance to them in the first place, because your damage on your scans is not the cause of your pain. The belief that it is what is contributing to the pain. If this video was helpful and informative, comment below to let me know. And if you want more videos like this, like and subscribe.